Welcome, everyone. This is our June meeting of the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm Dave Thompson. I'm one of the co-chairs, and I'd like to start out by having all of our committee members introduce themselves. And I'm going to point at Andre, since he's our other co-chair, to start that. Thanks.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dave. Andre Lightsey Walker, use he, him pronouns. I'm also a co-chair representing the Portland Metro region. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. And I will, I guess, pass it over to Beth.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Beth Young, I am OBPAC member, she, her, and let's see, I am the local / planning not liaison, but representative or position for OBPAC. Nice to see everybody. Although I only see Andre and Dave as the members.
Kathy, you want to go?
Oh.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Kathy Rigby from Newport, Oregon. And I could pass it over to Emma.
Good morning, Emma Newman. I'm in Springfield, Oregon, and I'm a non-voting member on OBPAC, and I use she, her pronouns. Passing it to Mavis.
I'm Mavis Hartz. I'm in La Grande, Oregon. I am an OBPAC member, and I am your business representative. So here we are, and I believe Noland is up next.
Yes. Hi, my name's Nolan Poole. I use also first, can you hear me or is my audio messed up? Okay. My name's Nolan Poole. I use he, him pronouns. I'm originally from Portland, but I go to university in Eugene, and I am the under 21 representative on the board.
Gary,
Del, you want to go next?
oh, Del, we can't hear you.
You're talking to me?
Oh, we're talking
No,
to
Del. Del, we can't hear you.
Yeah, well, if you want to move your microphone down from your headphone, it might, if you bring it closer to your mouth, it might work.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry. I forgot to do that. I should know better. Yeah, that's caught me out several times before. I'm Del Scharfenberg. I live in Milwaukee, Oregon. I'm tuned in here from my office in Beaverton. Yeah, I've been a member of OBPAC for a couple of years now, and am I the last one?
Carrie, please.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Roberson. She, her pronouns. I live in Portland, Northeast Portland, and I am the built environment advocate for Northeast Portland and Oregon, I guess. I enjoy being on this board, so thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. So I believe that's all of the members that I
Did Kathy go? Kathy went.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So Ian, why don't you kick it off for the ODOT folks?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Ian Davidson. I'm the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Manager with ODOT. He, him pronouns. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Roberto.
Thank you, Ian. And I'm also with the Public Transportation Division, Roberto Cotto, as an active transportation program analyst, he, him pronouns. I will pass it on to Leanne.
I am this Senior Active Transportation Policy Analyst for the Public Transportation Division. Pass it to Andrea.
Good morning, everyone. Andrea Durbin, Policy and Strategic Investments Manager with the Public Transportation Division, and I will pass it to our Division Administrator, Suzanne.
Good morning, Suzanne Carlson, Public Transportation Division Administrator. Do I have to figure out who I'm passing to? Did Ula go?
Ula needs to go.
Okay.
I was going to go later. Ula Yannick, I'm the interim Oregon Community Paths Manager.
Then maybe we round it out with Amanda Peets, who's here to talk to us today.
I am Amanda Peets. I'm the Division Administrator for Policy Data and Analysis. And many years ago, I had the pleasure of working with OBPAC, with Mavis, and with Emma. But all the rest of you are new to me, so nice to meet you. And I'll be talking here later on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So if we have any guests on today, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat room. We'll have a public comment period later in the agenda. So our meeting goals for today's meeting, basically we have 3 goals today. We're going to get an overview of ODOT's proposed capital improvement plan. Then the big item is we'll be reviewing and recommending Oregon Community Paths project list to the OTC. And then finally, we need to recommend an OBPAC member to serve on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. So that's our overall plan for today. So now I'm going to turn it over to Roberto to talk about our meeting etiquette. Roberto?
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair. So if this is your first time utilizing Zoom, just a reminder that for folks who are not presenting or are not a part of OBPAC, to please mute yourself. You're able to do that by clicking on this Zoom feature. As well, if you're thinking about doing public testimony, public comment, once we get to that part of the agenda, you're able to raise your hand by using the reaction button. And at that point, you're also able to unmute yourself. As you may see that there might be instances where we have issues with bandwidth. We're asking for folks who are not presenting or are not a part of OBPAC to stop sharing their video or to be able to do that. You're able to click on this feature as well. If you wish to change your name and change that, sometimes you'll see the computer name instead of your personal name. You're able to use that feature under participants. Just a couple of things on code of conduct. A reminder that to comply with Oregon law, we're recording this meeting. We're asking for folks as they're delivering public comment or anything in the chat room will be recorded, and try to keep this meeting as respectful as possible. And as I mentioned, we'll be hitting a portion of the agenda where we'll allow public comment. Once again, please add that into the chat room or raise your hand once we get to that portion. We'll allow 1 to 3 minutes for public comment. That being said, I will pass it back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Roberto. Okay, so our first agenda item then is a presentation on ODOT's capital improvement plan. So I'll turn it over to Amanda and Kayla.
And Dave,
Oh,
may I
sorry.
butt in briefly, please? I'm just seeing that our website does not provide any access to the meeting materials to community members. So I'm hoping that during this agenda item, staff could help post the meeting materials and public comments so that the community can see them. I heard from a community member last week, they're like, hey, you have a meeting next week. I'd love to give input. I can't see the materials. So that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Roberto, can you take that?
Yes, absolutely. Meeting materials and testimony, just because there may be materials that come in at the very last minute, get posted right after the meeting. So we'll make sure to add those to the website. Agenda gets added to the website prior to the meeting, so that should be already available to the public. But thank you for the reminder, Emma.
And Beth, you got your hand up there?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Question on if I want to bring something up, a new topic that's not on the agenda, do I do it now or do I do it during public comment?
I would suggest, Beth, that you bring it up during the section on OBPAC business.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And remind me if I forget by the time we get there.
Okay.
Okay. Don't see any other hands. So Amanda, you want to go ahead?
Great, Chair. Roberto, if you want to share the slide deck, or Kayla can, either way. But I have a slide deck I'll walk through. So I'm here today to talk about the capital investment plan. So for ODOT, this is a new way of agreeing on the investments moving forward that we make. I think you all are well tracking that transportation has significant funding gaps currently. So it's all the more important with very limited dollars to make sure that they go to the right things, that they're really benefiting Oregonians, travelers, businesses across the state. And so part of what I'm doing is going and talking to each of the modal committees, as well as our area commissions on transportation, and getting feedback to support the Transportation Commission in deciding how to prioritize investments. So what we're looking at is some of the goals that we have for our Oregon Transportation Plan, whether that's safety, state of good repair, mobility, equity, all those kinds of things. And how should the commission decide to weight those things to maximize the benefits across the state? And so that's what we'll talk a little bit about. But that's part of this bigger process and new body of work called the Capital Investment Plan. So next slide. So a little bit about what the Capital Investment Plan is. It's a 10-year look at what we plan to invest in. So it's intentional that says plan, because it's what we hope to spend and focus our money on. So in the past, how this is different is we've only had a 4-year STIP, which is our statewide transportation improvement program. That's how we spend our federal dollars. We've had a 2-year budget, and then we've had really nothing that's longer term than this. So this is looking longer term, and it's looking holistically. So not just at the federal funds or the state funds, it's looking at all our dollars, and it's capturing those. And so we're going to look at what we project to have available for money within that 10-year period. And that's going to be our planned investments. So it's going to be roughly fiscally constrained, what we think we can actually afford. A good share of what we'll show are projects, but we'll also have some amount that's showing like transit funding, for example. That goes to local transit agencies. We're not going to show the exact projects they have. A lot of that goes towards operations, but we are going to show the amount of money that supports public transportation, the amount of money that supports maintenance and operations, for example. Then we'll have a small reserve for quick response that over a 10-year period, we'll see changes in safety, we'll see changes in extreme weather. We'll need to be more agile to be able to adjust to those. So we want to reserve some there. Next to that teal box talks about investments of interest. So this will be a smaller, it's shown smaller because it'll be a small list of things that are probably something we can't afford right away, but that we think are really important and we want to invest in them. So if there's grant opportunities that come up, we have some projects that are ready that we can apply on, that we know what the scope is, we know what it's going to be. And then we want to show that in the context of total need, because as I mentioned at the top of this, we don't have enough transportation dollars to go around. There's going to be needs that are not met, and we want to show that on a more continual basis. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have the 4-year STIP. We also have our long-range transportation plan, which looks out 25 to 30 years into the future. There's just not been anything to bridge that gap. This is going to do that. It's going to create the accountability between our goals to actually how we spend our dollars. The old adage of show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities. That's what we're going to be doing very intentionally here. Next slide. The other thing that this helps us do is to show an investment strategy over a longer term. If you look at like one cycle of the STIP, you will see some random projects. You don't necessarily know how they connect. Now we can show, for example, what is our seismic strategy? What corridors are we focusing on? Because you can see that longer term investment. It also helps to understand trade-offs and short-term decisions. So we might have a big project like up in the Portland area that we want to borrow money to pay for today, but that has an effect over time. If we borrow today, we're going to have to pay that back. And then this will be able to show what projects more specifically we'd have to cancel in order to do that. So it's helping the commission understand more of those trade-off decisions. Next slide. We've had a not very transparent process in how we select projects and make investments in the agency. So we're going to create a much more transparent process and a much more disciplined process. So project ideas can only now, through this process, come from one of three places: from adopted plans. So that could be a city or county TSP, an NPO plan, or an agency interchange area management plan, for example. Or from an asset management system. So we have systems that track our pavement condition across and help us understand where we have some of the biggest issues. And I see Leanne put in TSP as Transportation System Plan. Thanks, Leanne. And then lastly, ACTS, Area Commissions on Transportation. So some of their project lists. So those are the three places we'll pull project ideas from. It's likely that there's going to be overlap of ideas across those three things, but if it's not in one of those, it can't feed into our process. And then we'll screen them through goals and metrics. So this is where I mentioned earlier, we're trying to figure out what are the goals and how do we weight them to make sure we get the right types of things. But after we do that, we'll want to use the human element and look at it and say, okay, we screen these through a data-driven process. Now, do we have the right mix? Do we have a good balance of roadway projects and biking and walking projects, for example, urban projects and rural projects, and so on? And then that gets us to a project list. Next slide. And then we'll really sequence the projects in kind of rough timeframes, where the out years furthest away are more conceptual in nature. We need to figure out more about the project and understand things. It might not be as urgent. And things are programmed based on urgency, readiness, which means constructability more or less, level of understanding of risk. So do we understand the right-of-way issues, the geotechnical issues, all the things in building the project? And do we have funding available? And so that's how we'll sequence projects. We'll update this plan every year and add a new year to it. And as we update it, we may resequence based on those things. Maybe something's become more urgent, we'll move it down into a different time frame. Okay, next slide. And we'll also update the STIP more frequently, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. That's the document of federal funds and how we spend those. We're going to shorten the time frame of that and have it closer to when we actually construct. So that will help with improving kind of scope and schedule, which is a lot of what we're trying to do. And part of this effort is making sure that we know enough about a project and have a good level of understanding to have better certainty in the cost estimates. And because we're actually putting them into the programming, the STIP, closer to the time that we actually will construct, that will improve the estimates as well. And we'll do more phasing. We'll do more design work before we do actual construction. Next slide. So we're in the process right now of identifying the goals to prioritize. We'll have metrics then we identify from there. To the right, you'll see an example from Nevada. So a number of other DOTs do this. So we have a nice menu to choose from of people with experience in this, and we can choose what's right for Oregon based on the feedback that we get. And then we'll develop this and link it into our processes. You'll see that it says prioritize goals every 3 to 5 years. We want some stability in the direction we're heading. So if we change those every year, we'd be kind of moving back and forth, and that stability creates in that 5-year look, unless something changes sooner, of the types of goals that are really important that we want to make progress on. Next slide. So in that vein, this is where I'll pause and love any feedback if you have it today. I'll also just say that we're having the conversation with the Oregon Transportation Commission at the end of July, where they will set these goals and the priorities that will be used to screen investments for the organization. So your feedback is super important. So anything you have today, and then if you'd like to write a letter to the commission, I know they appreciate it seeing in your own words too, of what you think the priorities are. I would recommend working with Roberto and staff and trying to get that in towards the end of this month or early July, just so the commission has time to see that and review it. So with that, what we're really pausing on is how do you think we should prioritize and weight some of these goals? Are there anything here, whether at the goal level where it says safety or accessibility, or at the bullet level where multimodal access is really important and reducing fatalities and serious injuries is really important? Whatever you want to highlight that you think is key to making sure that we get the best value or highest return on investment projects. So what to you means that we're making good investments? What are those things that we're advancing and furthering? So Dave, maybe I'll pass it back to you if you want to moderate a little bit of a discussion here. So if anybody has some thoughts now, and Roberto, can we skip back a slide so people can have that up as we start talking, and then we can pull it down as we get into the conversation. So Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Amanda. So I think we had a similar discussion about last time about priorities for the community paths projects, and so I'm definitely interested in our members' views on what's most important, and it's really hard for me because there are a lot of things on there I think are important. So I'd love to hear, love to have you guys let Amanda know what's important to you.
Chair, Kathy's hand is raised.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, thank you, Dave. I just wanted to say I really like this new approach. So just as a takeaway, I appreciate the emphasis on transparency. I would like to just put in a vote for increased geographic balance, so the equity portion. I think it's super important to not forget that every area of Oregon is so distinct that if ODOT doesn't work on that geographic balance, it really leaves a particular region in a bad position. So I would just like to put a plug in for that. I also, on the mobility side of things, really appreciate a focus on travel time improvements, especially being out here on the coast. We don't have as many opportunities to access public transportation, so making improvements, even on the smaller scale, on what we do have is super important. And that's all I have.
Mavis.
All right, I've got 3 things and they're kind of random. The first one is 10 years for me seems like pretty short term planning. I'd really love to see Oregon focus on, rail. I would love to get to Portland without having to go through all the Portland traffic. And right now my options are I hop in a car, I drive to Pendleton, I hop on a plane, I get to Portland, I hop on the light rail, and hopefully I can get around Portland there. So I think our connectivity within Oregon itself really needs a long-term focus that is longer than 10 years. So that's my first thing. I mean, I understand where you're going with this project and I appreciate it, but I also think that don't get too caught in the weeds of the short term, because that long-term goal of rail or an additional freeway across the bottom of the state or mid-state, those are things that may not ever happen, but they definitely won't happen if you never actually focus on them. Next is, this came up in a different meeting and I don't know what the answer to this one is, but they were saying that Fed money generally goes to like a new project, like you can't maintain, you can't do all these other things. So our roads are in such bad condition, particularly here in Eastern Oregon. I think they are all over the state, but at what point is that a new project? Because out here, I mean, I have roads that were paved, but now they are essentially gravel. So at what point is that a new project? So I have that. And then whenever we have this conversation, everybody's like, maintain what we have, maintain what we have. And I totally appreciate that because you don't want to lose what you already have money put into. But if it is a poor system, why are we spending all of our time maintaining it? And at this point, we have a system that is set up for roads, for cars. It is not set up for the general populace. So why are we working so hard to maintain a system that does not work for everybody? So advancing that instead of just clutching on to our pearls. Thank you.
Thanks, Mavis. Yeah, so I'll maybe respond to the federal piece. Mavis is correct. We cannot use federal funding for maintenance and operations, which is part of the major deficit that we're in with transportation funding. And at a certain point, you have to what we call rehabilitate an entire roadway because it's disintegrated so much. And that is 8 to 12 times more expensive than just maintaining it over time too. But that kicks in to be more of a preservation type thing. We can actually use federal dollars. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum we're in with funding that way. And then Mavis heard your other points in terms of making sure as we're developing this 10-year plan that we still have the eye on the longer term, bigger types of things to make sure that connectivity for everyone is important. So appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks. Nolan, looks like you're next.
Yes, thank you. I really like everything you said, Mavis. I thought that was really good. Now that I'm 21 years old, I have to argue for the future of Oregon, because I'm going to live here for a while, but I personally care a lot about sustainability and I guess how people move about places, reducing their carbon footprint. That's really important to me. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what Mavis said about, if the system we currently have is broken, where it's all, focused mostly on cars, why are we focusing on maintaining that instead of trying to, use these new, or not new, but, trying to focus more on new forms of transportation for Oregon, like, being able to bike in places or, a light rail system that would probably reduce tons of traffic on I-5, on the I-5 corridor. And so I think that is at least what I care a lot about. And not that I think everything on this list is very important, but that's where I would want to focus. Thanks.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Nolan. Appreciate it. Beth?
Beth?
Did you say my name?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Couple things. Right. I noticed in reading about the community paths, and I was going to bring it up then, and it's kind of goes along with what Nolan's saying. Really want to encourage bike and public transit commuting to work. Just a long-term way, providing that so that anybody who wants to commute to work can. That's a big goal, but that's one. The other one is what I was going to bring up in the discussion at the end, which is related to mobility. And so since we're looking big picture, I would say to downplay mobility of freight through cities, especially small towns. I know that there's this House Bill 2025 that's coming up, the transportation bill. Section 160 says wants to make it Oregon revised statutes section 366.215 say add a little part of the sentence there. It's a one sentence section. The Oregon Transportation Commission may select, establish, adopt, layout, locate, alter, relocate, change, and realign primary and secondary state highways, except, this is the added part, except that the commission may not reduce the width of an existing motor vehicle travel lane on an identified freight route to less than 12 feet. So let's, I'm strongly against that, and probably my fellow OBPAC members are too, based on previous discussions we've had here at OBPAC. And I wonder if Amanda could let us know how that proposal, if it becomes law, would impact the goals you're talking about here.
Sure, Beth, I can speak a little bit to it. So ORS 366-215 is known as kind of vehicle carrying capacity, or no reduction in vehicle carrying capacity. So when that was passed back in the day, actually was working with OBPAC then, and helped inform some of that. There were a number of routes, there's quite a few statewide, that are impacted by that. So if you actually Google ODOT reduction review routes, you can see on our map system what routes that applies to, and it's quite a few. So reduction review routes is what they're called. And we've, over time, since we did the bicycle pedestrian plan back in 2016, after that, we created the blueprint for urban design. And that enabled the agency to look at, to actually have the standard allow for 11-foot travel lanes, as opposed to assume that we needed wider travel lanes at the start. And so that was really context based. Whenever then we were planning to do design for a 11-foot lane, we'd go to the Mobility Advisory Committee and get kind of approval on those reduction review routes, that is the right answer for safety, for other reasons, particularly for pedestrians, reducing the crossing distance and some of those kinds of things. So this would put into statute a restriction on the lane width to be no less than 12 feet on these reduction review routes. So that affects quite a few routes, and then would not allow for that 11-foot lane. So if you want to see more on the extent, I would just suggest you look at some of the data that we have for those reduction review routes in the mapping system. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you. Carrie, you got your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Mobility stewardship of public resources is an interesting one, because I'm not sure if the current system is, even addresses some of the things. Our transportation throughout the state, if there's an emergency, is instantly impacted. We've seen that recently with the I-84 closure between Hood River and the Dalles with that. And I had just come from that area, and I just had, very much anxiety thinking about what would I have happened if I was on the other side of that. And then trying to come back in to the city. As well, the accessibility for disabled, for seniors, for people with small children is so spotty in all areas, whether you're urban, rural. It's dangerous, it's hazardous, and it is definitely not feasible for people to go on long walks with their children very easily. You're ditching and dodging, or you're even if it's going to places that are meant to be for the children, and there's less access there. So we have a large population of seniors and small children that will be also aging and need access in very many ways, and I think that's a very high priority for me.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carrie. Nolan, you've got your hand up again there.
Okay. I thought of even more things. and things I didn't say. So first off, going back to what I was just saying about focusing on sustainability, I guess I am aware of the fact that focusing on, reducing emissions as a whole would likely lead to a focus on urban areas, affecting the urban-rural balance of spending. I think it's really important to respect that spending divide. But I honestly think that the sustainability of our system is so dire that it should really, I would like to see it focus more on sustainability and less on the geographic balance of the state, because I just feel like it's way more important. And then I was also going to say, I've seen this tons of times across a bunch of Oregon cities where the state makes projects where it's like you're just putting a bike lane like next to a freeway essentially. And I don't know, I guess this is more of a traffic engineering problem, but I'm wondering, does the state account for like how usable a system is when they are calculating how many people would use it? I mean, as a biker, I wouldn't want to bike next to a freeway, but if it's one street over and it's a lot quieter, I would use that. And I just don't know if that's really ever accounted for. Because I've seen a lot of bike lanes where I'm like, nobody would use this because it's so, yeah, and I know it costs a lot of money to install that, but it's just, yeah.
Yeah, Nolan, good comments, and I think maybe I'll just speak to that real briefly, although I don't know that you were asking me to. I think there is a requirement, statute 3662. 315. I'm trying to remember which the one is, but it's the bike bill that requires a sidewalk or bike lane whenever a road is built, rebuilt, or reconstructed. And so regardless if that is the kind of attractive route or the best commuting route, we add those facilities to all roadways, which I think is important for accessibility, because you are going to access businesses and some of those things on those routes. And then we did some policy work back in the day with bicycle pedestrian plan around kind of those parallel routes, and then coordination with local communities on how do we identify some of those locations and think about that. So that might be something to maybe bolster in local and state planning efforts, is where those opportunities are that maybe feed into this plan. So that's a good point.
Thanks. Well, not seeing any other hand up.
I think
I have
Kathy has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Didn't see that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Thank you. Something that came to mind when Nolan and Carrie were both speaking, kind of having to do with sustainability and stewardship both. So I have transitioned to a cleaner fuel vehicle, but when there's an accident or something happens and you run the risk of not being able to get off the road, being stuck or trapped in traffic, Oregon has done a lot of great work to improve accessibility to EV ports, but they're so far away from the main roadways or the highways that you generally have to go a couple of miles outside of an exit to be able to access that, which kind of burdens the system, right? If there's an emergency situation. So maybe considering putting some access points or thinking how that impacts travelers through our state might be something that can increase sustainability, but also provide good stewardship of our resources, because we want more people to become users of this clean energy, but we make it very difficult to stay a user of that if we create barriers to access points for charging. So I just wanted to add that in, but because we're seeing more and more examples of that, as Carrie mentioned, when there's an emergency situation, which happens often here at the coast. If there's an accident, you're blocked off for, potentially hours from moving through traffic.
Yeah, no, great points, Kathy. I should have said at the top, because I said that my position name, but I oversee policy planning, research data, and climate. And so as part of the climate efforts, do the transportation electrification and all the investments in that. So pending federal litigation, we have the NEVI fund and are trying to add a network of north, south, east, west chargers along our major routes, including US 101. Those have to be within a mile of the roadway, and we are trying to get them as close as possible for that access question. And then are trying to incentivize the battery backup and other options should there be an emergency event. So I'm hoping kind of in line with what you're saying there, but I think also just a great point in general in terms of accessibility for all users all the time. How do we make sure that we're thinking about that holistically? Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda and Kathy. Oh, and Kathy, I'm sorry. The reason I have been skipping over you is your raised hand is blending into the background of your room. So I'm now keeping a better eye out for that. I apologize. Okay, Emma, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to voice support for kind of the right side in particular. So safety, accessibility, and equity. I'm really appreciating some of the sub bullet points there. And I believe through working on some of those things, there's then benefits that kind of expand to the whole system.
Benefits.
Thanks. Okay, now I'm going to say, not seeing any raised hands, I have a question, which is, and I don't know if you can address this, but I'd be interested in ODOT's view on how this new plan is going to help your dance with the legislature on funding going forward. Do you think that presenting them with longer term view will help keep us from zigzagging because we're always, 2 years out from another funding bill that just kind of starts over, it seems like?
Yeah, I know it's a great question, Dave. Actually, Roberto, can we pull down the PowerPoint slides and I can see everybody a little bit better? So a couple things. One, I think when I showed that original graphic with all the squares, I think showing our unmet needs on a continual basis is really important. I think all too often funding package will come in and we all go, yay, because it is yay. And it doesn't fulfill all the needs that we have. And I think then people are like, well, you got money, why aren't you doing these things? And I think we need to be much more transparent and upfront about what we're not getting to on a continual basis. So I think that's one point that's important to keep in front of folks. I think the other is the lack of transparency and discipline process in making investment choices. While I would say, my personal opinion, we do a pretty good job on the whole of trying to make investments that are smart for various reasons, but without that transparency and the clarity and the discipline process, I think it leads to a lot of, well, just trust us, we make good decisions. And I think we need to demonstrate that. I think we need to tie it back and show accountability. So a lot of things you've heard from the legislature are around accountability. As I mentioned, I think being a long-range planning person, I love the idea of tying our budget directly to our policy goals. I think that's a key piece of accountability. And then I think having that disciplined project selection process where it's really key that we're selecting projects because we're trying to advance specific goals and trying to kind of show technical merits of things. And it's very clear how we do that. I think that builds confidence and trust and provides an opportunity for the legislature to weigh in where they think is needed as well. So I think there's a couple different ways that that helps.
Thanks. I appreciate your thoughts on that.
I did have a quick comment specifically regarding the equity category. So I saw access to sort of like critical places as well as geographic distribution. But given the fact that ODOT has a traceable history of discriminatory urban planning processes, I was a bit surprised to not see any sort of investment discussion around historically impacted communities. And so I think that for that agency, it would be very important to sort of be addressing that in any equity work that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, Andre, that's a great point, and something I think we should be more clear about. We have a social equity index and map and tool that we've been using that identifies where we have disparities, lack of transportation options, some of those kind of things, because I think that does need to be a layer in all our decision making to do things. So we'll make sure we're pulling that and elevating that at the right level. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anything else for Amanda before we move on to the next agenda item? Amanda, anything else from your
Looks like
side?
Emma has something.
I think this
Oh,
is a great discussion. Historically, I've seen OBPAC, I think, be a bit more effective when we write a letter or we take some sort of action that goes beyond us having a conversation in the Zoom room. So I'd like to look at, is there a further action as a committee, either on this and or kind of a sidebar, but I appreciate Beth bringing up the legislation around 12-foot travel lane. I'm very shocked to see that slipped in there and concerned about that as well. So there's kind of CIP and the travel lanes topic.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So I mentioned earlier, I have been encouraging written comments. I think it's great. It's good for the commission to see it in your own words. Timing wise, they're deliberating at the end of July on this, and try to get something in early July or into this month would be great. That just gives them plenty of time to look at it, consider it as they're thinking about this. And your staff will talk to you, but I'll just say for any comments on House Bill 2025 for funding, things are working really fast. So you'll want to get any written comments on that in the next day or two. So. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn the time back to you all. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
thanks a lot, Amanda. And I'm going to turn it over to Andre to move on to public comment.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, before I hop in, I would I think, yeah, figuring out, and maybe we talk about this during OBPAC business, but figuring out a time if we have to put together a subcommittee to put something together on sort of shared values on this would be great. But we can talk about that more a little bit later. But yeah, as of Friday, we have received 3 pieces of written public comment, which are included in our meeting materials, and ODOT staff has already responded to the public comments where appropriate, or directed the comments to appropriate staff. So thank you for that. But did want to open up the floor for any members of the public that are present today that wanted to provide verbal public comment. And please, if you are interested, feel free to raise your hand. Yes, Sarah.
Hi, thanks everyone, and thanks for your hard work here today. It's so great to see some of our values and priorities aligning increasingly with project prioritization and spending. I did want to flag one thing. As many of you know, there is a major statewide transportation package underway, and I'm really glad to hear some of you talking about the 12-foot rule, we're calling it, which would be very challenging for people who walk, bike, roll, or try to access transit, especially alongside those routes. So I'm glad to see that OBPAC is taking an interest in that. But I also wanted to flag a couple of things. In House Bill 2025, we're very, very glad to see enhanced investments in programs like Great Streets, Safe Routes to School, and public transit, which will be transformative for Oregon communities. But there is a missing piece where Oregon Community Paths is not funded adequately in the statewide transportation package as proposed. So I know that OBPAC does tend to write letters. The timing is pretty tight on this, but that I hope you all can let your lawmakers know that you really do appreciate seeing the Oregon Community Paths program funded, and that you will reach out to them and let them know that you support the program. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, and thank you very much for advancing safety for people who walk, bike, roll, and try to access public transit.
Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate it. Any additional folks interested in public comment? All right. Then we are going to move on to our next agenda item. We have the opportunity to review and recommend projects that are funded through the OTC. We have Eula as well as Leanne, and they're going to present on the Oregon Community Paths program. And so thank you for your time. Super excited for this.
Thank you, everyone. I'll get us started. Roberto, if you want to, if you can share the presentation, that would be awesome. If not, I can get my computer set up to do it.
So while Roberto's doing that, I'd just like to jump in. I know you guys have been working really hard on that and that the timelines have been really tight. I looked at what you guys sent out, and hopefully our other members have had a chance to do that as well. I think it's a great list of projects. And I'm really excited that we can fund what we can fund here. I think hopefully we can have a good discussion about it, but I think it's a great list.
Well, in order to, oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. All right. So, and thank you, Dave, for those comments. My name is Leanne Ferguson. Again, I'm the Active Transportation Senior Policy Analyst for PTD, and Ula is our interim Oregon Community Paths Program Manager, and we're going to be trading off during this presentation. It has been a little bit of a sprint to the finish line on this project list due to some process improvements that we were able to make kind of in the last couple of weeks. And there is, we're able to post the presentations in the meeting materials. So those are in the chat. I did also want to note that in the chat, there was someone who maybe missed the call for public comment, and I'll just ask the chair if we want to revisit, or Andre, if we want to revisit that moment, or
Yes. Please, Joe.
I apologize for being late. I just wanted to say that this is my first meeting with you all, and I appreciate all of you who are either paid or unpaid volunteers. I bike commute across Portland every day. It's 10 miles a day, 100 miles a week, and the thing I want to share with you is my observation that is very unique, because I don't think anyone commutes that much through Portland. There are probably commuters who maybe are in the suburbs, but my observation is that bike numbers are down, declining compared to 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I started that bike commute. And I've been in Portland since 2004 doing leisure work. And I feel like I can't prove causation, but I believe it's because drivers are getting more aggressive and there is no enforcement on our greenways. So our greenways are an approach that differ from other cities that put bike paths on arteries. So Portland has chosen to ignore arteries and put cyclists on greenways, which is a whole nother can of worms to open up. But when I bike on greenways, I'm often T-boned by drivers who roll through stop signs. They think stop signs are not stop signs, they're just slow signs. And that is extremely stressful. Even though I haven't been hit in the last 10 years, I've watched 3 cyclists right ahead of me get mowed down by cars, T-boned. So the cyclist did not have a stop sign. The car did. The car did not stop and yield. And the cyclist was hauled away to an ambulance. And each time I was there before the police arrived. When the police arrived, I said, "Are you going to give this driver a ticket?" And they said, "No, I wasn't there to witness," one excuse after another. In the third case, the driver had expired plates, which I pointed out to the cops. I said, "They have expired plates. The stickers were covered up." And the police did not even cite the driver for the expired plate. So I think if we're going to really transition Oregon to a green economy, electric cars are not the solution. The propulsion engine doesn't make us much greener. It does statistically make it a little smaller, greener. But until we recognize that bike numbers are down because people don't feel safe, we are not making progress. So thank you, and I'll rest my.
Thank you, Joe. And Del, please.
I agree with Joe 100%. I also commute across Portland every day from Milwaukee to Beaverton, and I've been doing it for 40 years at least. And I do think that enforcement is totally lacking, and that would be the easiest solution to this. There's no enforcement of speed limits. There's no enforcement of stop signs. There's no enforcement of illegal turns. There's no enforcement of passing too close. Anyway, I agree 100% with what Joe just said. And it's just a zoo out there. And it's not because of the infrastructure. It's just because of people just don't give a damn about the rules and drive as if rules didn't exist. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Really appreciate that. I think enforcement is a recurring discussion and sort of I know ODOT is constantly exploring that discussion, but I think first and foremost, I just want to thank you for your dedication to the bicycle as a means of travel. I think it's important to have people in our community that are doing the actual thing, and so really appreciate that. And I can guarantee that everybody on OBPAC is committed to the sort of future you want to see, and so we're going to continue working to make it safer out there for people. And I do absolutely want to reiterate sort of a point that you raise is that electric vehicles, they're part of the solution, but they aren't the solution. People still die when they get hit by electric cars, right? And so I think reducing VMT of drivers across the state should be one of our safety goals as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to open the floor up one more time just for any additional public comment before we pass it over back to Leanne. All right, take it away. Thank you.
You're going to start us off, Leanne?
Yeah, thank you again, Roberto. Next slide, please. All right, so today we'll be talking about some of the program updates that we were able to accomplish between the last meeting and now in order to review do a quick review of our application process. A lot of these slides will look very similar to what you saw in May. So we're kind of going to move through those pretty quickly, and we're going to get to our sort of recommended project lists that staff has kind of pulled together based on your priorities and your feedback from the last meeting. And we'll have a discussion and look for a recommendation from OBPAC members, and then we'll move on to next steps. Next slide, please. And this one Ula will do.
Hey, I apologize if I freeze out. I feel like y'all have frozen on me a few times. So again, my name is Ulianik. I think I got to meet y'all last meeting. I am on rotation, temporarily helping the program, managing this program through the solicitation cycle. So this slide is a little bit of a review. This funding cycle for the solicitation is federal funding only for this cycle. It's transportation alternatives funds. And that's important because Federal Highway and ODOT have a stewardship agreement that governs how we deliver federal aid funded projects. Past cycles of OCP and hopefully future cycles may include state funding. And in this cycle, that was just federal funding. And so we'll do a very quick review of our eligible project types, which are regional paths and critical links. So on the next slide, you'll see just a quick review of regional paths, what that means. It's a multi-use path or trail, including bike trails, footpaths, meets those 4 criteria. We'll read them out to you. And then the next slide is critical links. Next slide, please. It means meets 1 or more of the following criteria: improving walking and biking access to high-need locations, improving walking and biking to areas where no connections exist or transportation options are limited. And so next slide, please.
I'll take this one. We wanted to talk a little bit about all of the projects that were funded in our 2020 and 2022 calls for applications. There are about 44 projects total, and the funding breakdown across each region for those projects was Region 1, which is kind of the Portland metro area, has received about 32% of the funds, or projects in Region 1, the Portland metro area, have gotten about 32% of the funds. Region 2, which is the northern coast down and into the valley down to Eugene area, is about 35% of the funds. Region 3, which is the southern coast area and the southern valley, is about 12% of the funds. My apologies. Region 4, which is Central Oregon, the swath right down the middle, includes Bend and Redmond, is about 7% of the funds. And Region 5, which is the far eastern sort of swath of Oregon, it gets about 14%. It has gotten about 14% of the funds. Some of our project examples include one that was we just got notification that was completed today, which is a Gold Beach Oceanside Drive multi-use path project for about $500,000. And this finding sign on the right here is one of the other example is the Reedville Trail. I believe that's in Hillsboro. That has been completed, repairs and extends the trail 1 mile, as well as a Juniper Hills project in Madras, which installs some connectors and some connectors to the community. And so those are examples of some of the great projects that we've been able to fund through the Community Paths program and kind of how it's been spread out across the region. Region 2 receiving the biggest percentage of the funds, which is actually not that unusual for a grant program. Region 2 has the most communities in Oregon. Region 1 has kind of the most people. Region 2 has the most communities. So, next slide, please.
So this is a summary. You saw this last time of the applications we received for the solicitation. And so overall, we have $61 million to allocate. You'll see this breakdown of applications that we received. It's split into construction applications and project refinement applications, which are kind of planning phase to kind of refining the project. It's not quite ready for a construction application. And all awards that will be granted under this require a 10.27% match. So that's the federal funding standard. And we'll move to the next slide. This was so we talked about this last time at our last meeting. We did a kind of a 2-phase review process. Our first phase was using the criteria that OBPAC had developed. We scored all the applications. PTD staff scored applications based on equity, safety, outreach, a little bit of project readiness, and reasonableness of costs and schedule. And we had come up with about using that scoring of about 150% list that we use at ODOT. We use that phrase a lot we take the amount of money we have, and then we add in a little bit extra to do more scoping activities. So then our phase 2, if you could go to the next slide, Roberto. In phase 2, we looked at what we call here at ODOT scoping. We did a little bit more scoping on about 150% list of those. So there's 19 selected projects out of the applications that we received. And those were doled out across regions. So Leanne had mentioned there's 5 regions in the state. And so each region got its applications, and the teams are made up of project managers and engineering subject matter experts in their various disciplines, roadway, right-of-way, hazmat, things like that. And they look at the applications and determine a cost estimate. And again, this is because of the federal funding portion aspect of this program. This scoping was used to come up with cost estimates of what ODOT believes it will cost to deliver the project.
And that's important because many of these projects ODOT has to deliver due to the federal nature of the funds. So what we did after we received the updated estimates from ODOT, we connected with 10 applicants where the ODOT estimate differed from their estimate. And we were able to offer some options for how to negotiate that difference. One would include sort of working on reducing the scope a little bit to fit if the project came in higher. Also, we offered the opportunity for applicants to see if they could pull together a little bit more local cash match in order to meet a higher grant request amount to meet the ODOT delivery amount. And we also offered that if you were eligible to deliver the project, some local agencies are eligible to deliver federal funding. They have to kind of go through a process that even if they said they had wanted ODOT to deliver it during the application, we could update their application that they could actually deliver it. And in that case, they could use more of their own cost estimates. And we also gave them the option that they could pull their application out of the running. So those were the options. We worked with 10 applicants, and a couple decided to reduce the scope, a couple decided to increase the match, and a couple decided to deliver locally that were able to do so. One application decided to withdraw due to there being maybe better opportunities locally to fund what they wanted to fund, and not use federal funding and have ODOT deliver it. So that was what kind of took the time between our May meeting and this meeting, was having all of the regions go through that scoping process to ensure project deliverability for the projects that ODOT needed to deliver. So because of that additional work, we are now, yeah, Beth.
Yeah, just clarification on so that last sentence, and most applicants updated their match amount. Some selected to reduce their project scope, and 2 are certified to locally deliver federally funded projects themselves. So they decided to locally deliver. Is that the same as being a certified local agency?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, thank
Nailed
you.
it. Good job. And happy to talk more about that, but also happy to just keep chugging if folks kind of understand there's a process for local agencies to be certified to deliver local projects. This all has to do with that agreement that we have, that ODOT has with FHWA. So it, but good catch, Beth. Way to make those connections. So what I will say is after all of the additional review that I am really proud to introduce for you all the next several slides that Ula's going to go over, which is sort of those ranked project lists of like projects and then a list of alternates that sort of encompass that 150% that Ula was talking about. And we generally, for community paths, have OBPAC review a project list plus review the alternates and recommend both lists, because there's still a lot of legwork with federal funding to do, and some agreements that need to be written. So every once in a while something pops up where a project is actually can't move forward through that process. So we want to have some alternates just in case amount, like if a cost amount actually comes in less than what we thought it was when we have additional funding, or if someone figures out a fatal flaw in a project that we haven't caught and it can't move forward, then we'll have a couple of different projects that y'all have already reviewed, and we can sort of slide in there to keep the money rolling out the door so that we're not sitting on funds. So I will pass it back to Ula to go through those lists. Next slide,
So-
please.
So we'll start with our project refinement list. These are, I'll say planning phase a lot because the way that federal funding works, you put the money in certain phases, one of which is planning. And so the OBPAC had decided before I came on to, in the criteria, to set aside at least $6 million for project refinement projects. And luckily, we are able to fund a majority of the applications. And so we had gone through and we had scored these based on safety, equity, and outreach. So equity, when we talked about, I think Amanda had luckily introduced some of these concepts already, but equity, we used the social equity index. We looked at safety being, there's safety criteria that OBPAC had come up with, and the outreach. And so this is kind of that list of that, the order of the list. And we do show the delivery agency. There are some certified agencies on this list, so they will be able to deliver these as a certified agency under our certification program. And then, so this is the majority of the projects that went out. And then on the next slide, you'll see the alternates list, and these just were below that dollar cutoff. So we still think they're worthy projects. And if something comes up, like Leanne said, sometimes things come up through the kind of agreement negotiation process and timing things like that can come up. That way we have the next available projects ready to go. So this does constitute all of the applications. So that is the nice thing about what, you know, this program is kind of new to me, but to have this as kind of smaller amounts, but having that set minimum that OBPAC had decided to set aside for these really helps. I think communities get to know like where they have really good solid projects and where they might need a little bit more work in terms of figuring out more of the cost estimating or you know, getting to a good project to lead into design. So I will stop there just for a second, but before we move on. So hi, Beth. I see your
I
hand.
have a question. Hi. Let's see. Is this listing in order of most points gained?
Kind of our ordered points based on the equity, outreach, and safety criteria.
Only those criteria.
Yes,
All right.
because some of those were kind of more aimed towards construction projects. So things like the criteria that dealt more with how hard is it to build don't really apply to a planning phase at this point.
Okay, so you didn't prioritize intersections versus side street versus connecting
So
communities.
in the safety criteria, there were more points. The points were delved out, and I'll pull those up. The safety criteria guidelines in that really dealt with that issue of like daily traffic, the crossing distance, were there accidents that were there? Were they did they result in injury or death? Those were in the criteria that went into this scoring.
Thank you.
Else on these? Leanne, anything to add on these or?
No, we'll also have time where we can come back and look at these lists a little bit more during our discussion. So feel free to have more questions.
Great.
I think we
So
can
we'll move on
yeah.
to the next slide. And here we're moving into construction, which gets a little bit more complicated. And this is really the focus of our additional scoping efforts. So these were, I think I'd mentioned, we had done a preliminary scoring in phase 1, looking at then all of the OBPAC criteria, and had some the staff from PTD look over these and score these so we could come up with some priority order. And we took these projects to the regions to say, hey, you know, these are projects we think would be good for the program to fund. Let's look at these and figure out, you know, what the estimates are and can ODOT deliver these. And so these had gone through the scoping process at the regions. And this is where Leanne had mentioned some of the estimates for ODOT cost estimates had maybe gone up a little bit. And so we decided that we would rather provide more federal funding to fully fund those projects, which would result in a higher local match amount. So that's the list you'll see here. And that's really the main updates that from our last meeting is that an applicant might have asked for a certain amount of federal funding based on their estimates of their project. And we, ODOT looked at
We
it and
allowed we
aligned
allowed
those with
applicants
ODOT's estimate.
to update their applications to align with the ODOT estimate, which was needed in order for the project to be delivered, or they reduced their scope. But we went back to the applicants with all that information. So this is updated application information after receiving that additional information.
Notes on this, OBPAC criteria has the max amount requested at 6 million. So you do see that 6 million as a nice even number. And then some of the other amounts, sometimes you'll see the like nice round $0 and some you'll see like specific dollars. They might be a little bit adjusted as we go through the process. If these are recommended and picked, and as we go through the process, those slight dollar amounts might adjust just a little bit here and there on the dollars. But these were based on the estimates. So sometimes they come out nice and round, and sometimes they come out a little bit more particular. And I do want to chat a little bit too about the alternate list. So if we can move on to the next. So we have 3 alternates listed. And one thing we did want to bring up is the possibility of adding a couple more projects to this alternates list to give us a bit more flexibility about the funding. We have 3 more projects, Klamath County, Madras, and Rockaway Beach, that the requested amounts would be slightly less than this amount. And so if for some reason something comes up and we do have more available funding or savings, but maybe not enough to fund a bigger project, we would have 3 alternates that we can add to this list. So that is one thing for discussion today as well. But we have these 3 projects as alternates, and then 3 more that we could possibly add as well. Now at the around the cut line of like how much money we have available.
So I think that can take us to our next slide. All right, so and we can go back to any of the other slides and talk a little bit more about this. We would really, because this has really all happened really fast, and we just want to make sure that we cover any additional questions about the process, that we talk through any additional considerations that OBPAC members have. We haven't heard anything via through your review process, but this is the time. And what Ula just brought up, which is that our alternates list for the construction project are all pretty high in their cost amount, and we think we could add a few more projects, the next 3 down to that project list, to add a couple more options in there. So we wanted to get your thoughts on all of that, and then by the end of the discussion, we will hope that y'all can together make a recommendation that we can move forward. So all of the lists that you've seen so far are kind of just like it's like draft lists pending y'all's discussion, and then ultimately they'll go to the Oregon Transportation Commission as part of like all of our federal projects go through the Oregon Transportation Commission. Yes, Beth, I see your hand.
Okay, a couple comments. I like that there's almost everybody got their project refinement funds who asked for it. And because that really helps out the small towns, smaller jurisdictions that don't have any way of planning for a construction project out in the city. So great. I think this helps with the rural urban equity issue. And I wanted to comment on the choices in alternate projects for construction. Kind of going along with that is that if you do have smaller towns that maybe make that a priority, or smaller staff, engineering staff, etc. And that's my thought. And then also just in general, I'm reiterating what I said before about supporting commuters. I do believe this program, I could be wrong, was to encourage people to commute who need to from one town to another. It wasn't really meant to be recreational per se. And so in I want to say let's go with commuters, supporting commuters whenever we can. And in some communities, such as this one, there needs to be a safe commuting path from one part of town to the other. And so these small towns like Newport, with its very interesting topography and a big bay to cross, that maybe if people are commuting from one part north to south, that somehow some priority to that. But there is no alternative exterior part of town that could become a community paths recipient. The only community way to do it in some towns is through town. So just wanted to point out those couple things.
Thank you, Beth. Mavis?
I would like to show support for adding those 3 additional onto the alternative list, just so that you guys have a little bit more wiggle room, because the more money we get out the door, the more we get to get things built and get things going. Looking at the project refinement, it's really not geologically balanced at all. Like, there's a couple regions that have a lot, they're asking for a lot of planning money, and then there's the other side of the state that has basically nothing. And so my worry is that the next round of funding that we're looking at, we're not going to have anything in, I think it was region 4 and 5, that didn't have anything in the planning stage. And if you don't have anything in the planning stage, you're probably not going to come back and ask for monies to build something. So that lack of geographics spreading the peanut butter kind of is a red flag for me. I don't know the answer, whether it is outreach, what, I don't know, but that is kind of like, I'm looking at it and worrying about it, because futuristically I would like to see, something on this side of the state, and looking at the planning of the projects, that may not be happening. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for that feedback, Mavis. That is something we heard from you all last month as well, that that the spread, especially of project refinements, could use a little more balance around the state, so that we are using the applications that were submitted for this round on this for this list. So thank you for that feedback again. Very good feedback and very welcomely received. So thank you. So it sounds like so far we're not hearing too many like red flags for the list as a whole. We're hearing some bigger comments just about adding my computer's saying my internet is unstable. So oh no, or that might be Roberto's computer's internet is unstable. Sorry about that, Roberto. Okay, so sorry, my brain went haywire for a second. Sounds like Mavis would like to consider adding the 3 additional projects to the construction. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about those 3 projects so that folks could understand that. And then we could maybe discuss that a little bit more if that's something that folks want to see.
Sure. Yeah, the next, just, these are all very close at this point in terms of they're all projects we want to see built, and so these are just kind of the next round when it comes to the available funding. And so the next three that we would like to put on the list are in Klamath County, Madras, and Rockaway Beach. And so that's 2 projects, Region 4, 1 project in Region 2, and much smaller communities. And so those some of those projects would be a little bit less expensive, and so there would allow us a little bit more flexibility to approve those. The Klamath County project is a Foothills Patterson connection. In Madras, there's a Willow Creek multi-use path reconstruction, Buff Street to C Street, and Rockaway is our beach connector to Salmon Berry Trail. So I'm looking at just kind of estimates, the ODOT estimates on those. It would be about I don't know if Leanne, if you'd like me to provide some of the information now or just add it right into the meeting minutes later, but roughly there's about a 4.7 million for Klamath County, 1.6 million in Madras, and about 5 million for Rockaway Beach total. So, or those would be the federal, the OCP amounts as just rounded out.
If you could put those amounts in the chat, I think that would be great, just so that folks can remember them.
Can do.
And then Roberto, if you can show us slide 13 one more time. I'm also want to note that I hear my connection might be unstable, so I might have to switch to my phone. But I think enough people are letting me know that I'm cutting out that if that happens again, I'll switch to my phone. But so what Ula is saying is to add. She's about to add 3 projects with amounts into the chat, and that we could add those 3 to this construction projects alternate list. And that is what Mavis mentioned in her comments, that she would potentially like to see that happen. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, so overall, I think you guys have done a fabulous job here. And I think your prioritization is quite good. Obviously, there's always winners and losers, unfortunately, since we don't have as much money as we would like. I do agree with the idea of adding the other 3 projects as alternates, especially given the cost differentials there, so that you've got a good place to plug a smaller hole if one shows up. I think that's a great idea. But I'm very supportive of the list that you've presented. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Carrie?
Thank you. I also just wanted to say, maybe I heard you about possibly doing more outreach to those communities in Region 4 and 5. I know we had talked about that in our previous meeting on, just doing outreach to smaller communities and rural communities in general that are less represented. So we definitely have that as a action plan in the future.
Thank you, Carrie. And we will come back to you all as that new solicitation happens in a couple of, in about, I think in around 2026, we'll be able to open up another one for state funds. And so we'll come back to OBPAC and see if you all can help us with some of that outreach as well in your areas. Yes, Beth.
Okay, I noticed in the messaging that Christina T is commenting, asking for tips, anything that would have improved or strengthened their proposal for the city of Coos Bay. I would just say I would ask ODOT staff. They're so knowledgeable. Probably Ula, and just have a nice conversation with her, because I think she's on top of it all. So that's all. Just responding to that.
Thank you, Beth. That is absolutely true. ODOT staff is happy to meet with applicants once we're kind of like through the process. We'd love to work with people on how to make their applications more competitive in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Thank you for continuing to reapply. We actually try to make the application pretty similar each time so that it's easy to reapply again, because we know that there are so many great projects out there and we just don't quite have enough money for all of them. It has, so thank you for applying and reapplying. We appreciate it. Any other OBPAC members want to have any more questions about the process or have any additional considerations? It looks like we're kind of leaning towards adding those 3 projects to the alternates list. So if discussion is kind of winding down, okay, never mind. Emma, go for it.
Winding down on content, the first question
Yeah.
that you posed to the committee is around process. And so I know, Ula, you are an interim in this position. There's been a lot of change of staff, so that presents challenges for the agency delivering these types of programs. But I'm just curious from staff, how would you answer that first question around process? Are there things that you've learned in the last few months that might be beneficial for us as a committee to say, hey, next time around, whoever the staff is, please pay attention to X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, that's great. Roberto, you can stop sharing the screen for a second if you want to, so that we can kind of see everybody. So I can take a stab at this one, which is that there has been a lot of staffing changes, and Oregon Community Paths is a little bit of a complicated program because of the nature of the federal funding and the state funding kind of together in one program, as well as building off road paths is not something that ODOT does a lot of. So it's not necessarily in our bucket of things that we do all the time. So I would really, as a staff person, I see a lot of process improvements that we could do with Oregon Community Paths, and I am really excited to dig into them and do some evaluation of that program to how to make it easier for applicants, sort of getting to that outreach piece and the capacity piece of grant writing in our communities, as well as from the ODOT side, like running a quick two-phased process near the end of a solicitation was pretty taxing from on the staff perspective as well as the applicant perspective. I'm sure all of the applicants that we reached out to, those 10 applicants, could tell you that was pretty taxing to try to figure that out at the last minute. So great question, Emma. And really the value statement that I would bring is, yes, I would love to do process improvements and really focus on the ease of applications. The ease of
I could speak a little bit as well to that. So one thing, the big thing when I came in January is something that it's not as clear to the public, but the difference between federal and state funding and how it's used is huge. It's and so one of the things that will involve a little bit of education to the public and applicants is the difference between what it means to be a federally funded project versus state funded. And that is really a big lift. And so that was a big reason of why in the solicitation being fully federally funded. I know in the past there had been some mixes of some projects were state funded and some were federal. And when you have a solicitation program that's all federal, it is just it requires different processes. And I came from, my permanent job at ODOT's in Region 1 in project delivery, and I work with local agencies all of the time on federal aid projects. I've done it for 15 years almost. So I kind of came in to help, update some of that. And for sure, for next time we have a federal funded round, we're going to take a lot of that and build that connection with the Delivery and Operations Division because of that, that kind of just the needs of our federal highway work. And so I kind of came in to start bridging that gap a little bit. And so that's going to be a big one. And then, when we go back to state funded program, if there's another solicitation that's state funded, we won't need to have this type of process, but we do want to have that federal dollars available for this program. It's really great and it can take us a long way And so we do, and it's definitely on our list to work on process improvements internally for staff. And yeah, I mean, the reality of federal government and state government work right now is going to be a little tricky for the next couple of years for us, but we're definitely going to work on it and improve it for next time. And that includes just education outreach for applicants as well, and for staff and stuff. So
yeah, I think you're hearing like the amount of stuff that we've done in the last 4 weeks has been really fast for us, and we'd like to not do it that fast. We'd like to spread it out and do it in a way more reasonable timeline. So great question, Emma. I'm wondering if you had any additional comments before I move to Beth, whose hand is up.
I think for me, what's at the core of it is like I see the stress that ODOT staff are under. It seems like there's a crisis culture at the moment. And so it's really difficult to do hard work when it seems like so much stuff is coming at you. I get that. And I think about the implications from communities that are applying and participating, and how unfortunately some of the actions taken, in my mind, seem to result in disrespectful processes. And so I'm just looking for opportunities for this PATH program to enhance trust and partnerships between the communities that are delivering projects and doing the great work, and the staff who are, trying your best to get the money to produce the result desired. So I'm just seeing that dynamic, and I'm glad that you're tuning into, okay, how can we improve this, recognizing that we're getting to the end result, but maybe the process wasn't ideal. And so leaving those breadcrumbs as little tips for future staff would be really helpful.
Should I just
Thank
start
you.
in?
Yep.
Okay. So sorry, Ula, this may have been answered already. How are with the construction projects, how are you going to pick between the now 6 projects?
I think it will be something, we'll need to talk with y'all, but some of it will be money availability. I don't know,
We also,
yeah, we might want to chat about that a bit, but
I have something I can say right now. So the 3 projects on the alternates list. So we heard from you all at the well, yeah, we'll definitely have to do with how much is available, because these are 3 big projects. The 3 projects that we're adding are smaller projects, but they are they continue to be in sort of that ranked order from the scoring process. And what we heard in your last meeting was, and we haven't had any sort of like tie, we don't really have any ties in that process right now, but what we heard in your last meeting was that we wanted, you all would like us to, when making those tie-breaking decisions, focus on upgrades or new paths, or up versus upgrades, and to focus on geographic distribution to make sure that we are distributing across those ODOT regions. So if we have tiebreakers in that area, those are the values that we would pull into it based on our last discussion in May.
And we do have like the data breakdown of the population size and the amount and that type. So there'll be a couple of factors into it. Number one being how much money do we have newly available for us? And then
that's
the next
the main factor.
Okay, so we've got region 4, we've got region 3.
If there's a tie, yeah, like if there's a tie in the scoring, we could use some of your values around that. But we're going to use that ranking whenever that is, because that's the best available we have to measure priorities.
And depending on the timing, we'll reach out, to these applicants and discuss where they are. If there's, still interested and want to pursue working with ODOT.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's been such a crazy couple of weeks. So the 3 projects that Ula mentioned to add to this list are not the 3 projects. We did that back and forth with 10 applicants, but we haven't done that back and forth with these 3 applicants yet. So
The new ones, because we weren't sure if they
the-
were gonna,
yes.
add them yet. So
So we would need to do a back and forth with them if we get to that point in time to say like, does this amount work for you? And sort of those options that we gave everybody else. So if
there's quite a bit of
there-
work that happens between allocation and award and then actually signing an agreement too. So there's a lot of time of discussion and negotiation and figuring stuff out during that time. So
Yep. Thank you all. I'm sorry, I'm not being as succinct as I'd like to be. I'm like, get it together first.
That's a great question, so.
I know it was a great question.
And it just multiple factors will go into that. So.
Multiple factors. Yeah, multiple factors. Any other questions or comments or discussion? I think what the next step would
Slide
be
16 now on the in our PowerPoint.
Well,
or no.
I think what I'd like to do is to so we've had our discussion. So now I would love to see if OBPAC could help make a recommendation to ODOT with moving forward on the projects and the alternates based on your priorities through the scoring mechanism and doing some additional steps around project deliverability. So looking for kind of an official recommendation from the OBPAC as a group.
Would you like a motion? Because I would love to make a motion.
Yeah, Mavis, that would be super fun.
Awesome. I would like to make a motion that the projects presented to us, they move forward to the OTC, and those additional 3 for funding also are put on the docket as a fallback if we cannot grant the larger ones that would be technically first on the list.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstaining? All right, I believe that motion passes. Hooray! Yay for funding! Woo!
Make us
Carrie,
pretty
did you
big.
have a Carrie? Okay, good. Carrie's. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a question and that was your hand raised. So thank you, everybody. Just for the record, since this is just for anyone verbally just listening in and can't see the screen, we had a unanimous vote. Emma abstained because she's or not abstained, but Emma's our non-voting member. Thank you for being here, Emma. And we didn't have any opposed. Thank you all very much. And it'll leave you a little bit more time to do your OBPAC business, which it sounds like there might be a couple of big things to check in about. Thank you all. Oh, and now actually we do want to just quickly do the next step slide, slide number 16. Sorry, Roberto. Can you share your screen one more time?
Yeah, this just summarizes where
Okay,
we're
this
at
is
right
just
now,
summarizing. So we had so we're at our OBPAC impact input stage. Thank you for that recommendation. The project list approval will actually go to the Oregon Transportation Commission in 2 stages, but we'll be presenting to them on July 31st. ODOT staff, our division administrator, will likely be presenting to the Oregon Transportation Commission on July 31st with these project lists, and then they will go to the OTC, the Oregon Transportation Commission, in 2 phases as part of our STIP process. The STIP process is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which is how all of our federal funding get approved and able to be built. So thank you all very much. That's the end of the slides. And yes, Beth.
Where my train of thought go? Oh, could you give us the stats on how much funding was asked for versus how much we're going to be giving? Because Sarah mentioned that Oregon Community Paths is underfunded or will be underfunded with the new transportation bill?
Yes,
I
we did
don't know if you
include it
gave
in
us-
our presentation. And so when we post this, I'm not sure if it's posted already, but it will be on, yeah, it's $102.5 million, $102 million, a little over for construction that was asked for out of 55, and 8 million in planning project refinement out of 6 million available. So only a little bit more on the planning end, but
Yeah,
a lot more for
double
construction.
on
It was
construction.
it was about double, and the amount that we have this time was way more than we have had in the past for Oregon Community Paths. So so in the past we have been sort of 3 to 4 times oversubscribed, and this time we were about 2 times oversubscribed.
Do you know what's in the budget for the proposed budget? Is it going to be something like 55 million again, or 60, or I'm talking federal, because
I'm
more
not sure about
complicated.
federal funds.
Yeah, because the next round, this allocation will take us out for about 4 years. So then in 4 years, we'll have an updated number. We don't know right now. So the next solicitation, I believe, is planning to be state funded only. I believe the plan is to go back and forth, because federal funding does take us out a couple more years.
Yeah, so you don't have numbers on that now.
The
last time, how much was asked, how much we had, and what this new bill is proposing.
Let's
yeah,
see if we can get that for you all in the best way possible. So what I'm hearing Beth ask is like, how much do we anticipate having, and we'll see what we can do to try to anticipate some of those numbers, and we'll try to get that to you. We'll see what we can do in a quick timeline. But we don't have those projections right now in front of my fingers, but
Okay. No
I
problem.
think the other portion to add to that would be the historic trend. So like the first time, how much were we oversubscribed? Second, so that we can create, because I'm assuming that Beth is getting ready to write a letter. And
Not me, you, Mavis.
she needs the stats so that we can look smart.
Yeah. Yeah, we can come up with neither. It's unfortunate that neither Ula and I have those numbers at our fingertips right now, but we are we can find some information and make sure that we send it to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that was a great discussion, and I'm very excited that we've made a recommendation, and that's moving on so we can get those funds out to people. Next item on the agenda is OBPAC business. Before I jump into the Safe Routes to School, which is on the agenda, I'd like to quickly see if Andre, I believe, suggested that we draft a letter to the OTC on the capital improvement program presentation we saw. And so I think the best way to approach that would be to have a small subcommittee draft something up that the full committee can review at our July meeting. So if there are people interested in doing that, can we see your hands?
I could make a draft. If
Okay,
yeah,
so,
if they
so Andre and Nolan. Anybody else want to join in?
did I forgot who it was. Someone was talking about, wasn't the legislation at the end of July?
So they're two separate. The legislation we're not able to do a unified OBPAC submission on, but for the capital improvement plan, we can have a shared because that's going to the OTC rather than the legislature. So I'm not sure what the timing is. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just bring up what Emma said, is that soon enough if we do it by the July meeting? I don't know.
My notes
Yes.
have it as end of July is our shared values letter.
What I heard from Amanda, I believe, was that OTC is setting their goals and priorities in the end of July. Our input, if we were submitting a letter to OTC, would be due by early July.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that seems reasonable to me. Nolan, if you want to, we can connect offline and maybe schedule just an additional meeting of us two before the end of this month.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so then are we doing a subcommittee or are we just sending it on behalf for the timing reasons?
Yeah, I guess is anybody else interested in being involved, or would you feel comfortable with us presenting a draft to you via email ahead of our July meeting that we could confirm during our July meeting?
That sounds great.
I think that sounds great.
I think we're back to the timing thing. Mess up with our timing. Do we need to have it prior to that meeting, or can we wait and vote on it at that meeting and still get it to the OTC on time? Ian, sorry. Ian.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah. So the Oregon Transportation Commission meeting is on July 31st. Your OBPAC meeting is before that. And so if you are able to come to actually finalize the language in your OBPAC meeting in July, then it would be prior to that meeting. And then you could submit it then. You're not going to be, it would be public comment. And so my understanding is you have until, I don't know if it's quite day of to submit public comment, but you do have enough time in advance, and I'll confirm that separately. If that changes, I'll let you all know immediately.
Okay, I think that's fine if we do a subcommittee then, and then vote on it then. And I assume we can send out the draft sooner and people can look at it. So I don't know. Are you saying me, Andre, and did anyone else want to join?
I think it's you two.
Okay.
You are the committee.
Cool. I'm moving along because we're running out of time here. So Nolan and Andre have that. So our other item of business is for the committee to recommend one of us to serve on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. I understand that Nolan has expressed interest in that. And so what I'd like to do is open this up for nominations. So I will nominate Nolan since he's expressed interest. Is there anyone else that wishes to nominate someone other than Nolan or themselves for Safe Routes to School? I don't see any. I don't know. Do we need a motion to vote on that?
Please. You were there.
I move to vote on Nolan Poole as the Oregon Bike Ped Advisory Committee representative of the Safe Routes to School Committee, taking Mavis's slot. Thank you, Mavis.
Thank you, Mavis.
And I will
Have a
second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nolan, congratulations. We're going to recommend you.
Thank you,
I don't know what the
Nolan.
process is from here, but
Thank you
do us
for
proud.
nominating me. I'd like to say thank you to my parents for this wonderful.
Okay. Anything else
Beth,
anyone wants to
from
bring
the
up
beginning.
quickly?
I just wanted to the thing is do submit comment as individuals, please, to HB 2025. And I'll put the section in the message thing before, and I'll do it right now before everybody leaves. That's all I had to say.
Great.
Thank
I
you,
did.
Beth.
Beth, you had an item at the very beginning of the meeting. I want to make sure you have, or Yeah.
That was the item.
Oh, beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Awesome.
And that's
Thank
the 12-foot lane thing, right?
And there's the Oregon Community Paths funding piece as well that Sarah commented on.
Yeah. that
Yeah,
too.
so I had 3 letters that I thought that we should maybe focus on. One was 12-foot travel lane, which we can't write that letter. We have to write it as individuals, not as OPPAC. The CIP, which Nolan and Andre are going to be working on that. We will approve that to pass on at our next meeting. And the last thing was to thank and express to the legislative committee that the community paths needs much more money to be effective. But I'm assuming that also falls under that we can't actually write a letter as OPPAC. We would have to do individual letters for that one. Am I checking that correctly?
If we're trying to influence the current legislation on funding for ODOT to affect that, then yes, it's not something that OPPAC can weigh in on at this point.
Okay. Thank you. I just needed some clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just overall for people on the committee, right? We advise ODOT and the Oregon Transportation Commission. We do not advise, and the governor, we do not advise the legislature. So things that the legislature is working on, we need to comment on as individuals. Okay, over to you, Andre, for final thoughts.
Wonderful. So we all get to hang out next month. It's so exciting. Really love our in-person meeting. So looking forward to meeting with everyone. I have the dates of July 22nd and 23rd. Is that correct on my calendar? And everybody else's?
I guess
Awesome.
so.
So really looking forward to that. We're going to get presentations from local region staff, a legislative retrospective, a leadership election for our OBPAC. So potentially putting in some new chairs, exciting. And there will be more details on the agenda forthcoming, but there's also going to be a bike tour. So yeah, just really looking forward to gathering with you all. I believe accommodations have been sort of worked out with everyone individually. And so, yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing you all then.
Yeah.
Oh, and a Mavis send-off. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Well, yeah, it's been such a pleasure. And yeah, it's just going to be a great time. So really looking forward to seeing you all. And thank you for your commitment to improving bike and ped experiences in the state.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
you.